Well, we're live, Brendan. Have I lost you there, Brendan?
Oh, hi, Ali. I think we're live and kicking, yeah?
We are live. Yeah, we're live. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, great. No, I didn't hear you there. There's some issue. Anyway, as smooth an intro as we've had in the days. I hope all is well down Parkway Way in the south of Bogotá that I call it anyway. But look, let's crack on with things here as I'm way up in the north. Coming up tonight on Colombia's only live and interactive English language chat show, we're going to be taking a look at some Colombian quirks, or idiosyncrasies, if you will, behaviours that at times have us scratching our heads. I'm sure all of you, whether you're Colombian born and bred or a foreigner here, have examples, so do please share them with us using the comment facility that you're watching us on here. Before we delve into all that, we've got a review of this week's news, and it's somewhat difficult to imagine that just 7 days ago, or 8 days ago for some, that's hoy hace ocho is this here, we were talking about Bogota and Colombia in general burning due to the violent protests against police brutality. Ollie, considering the relative calm over the last few days, it almost seems like those protests happened a year ago and not last week. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's completely correct, Brendan, that analysis. Just not much seems to have kicked on. I mean, we had big events, obviously, on Wednesday and a tragic loss of life. A few scattered protests on Thursday, and since that, there's been almost nothing going on. I mean, almost worryingly so. I think there's something quite worrying about the fact that we saw 13 people die in relatively extreme violence for the capital, and it doesn't really seem to have had an effect. There were a few stories. There's a running point about the clash between Duque and Claudia Lopez. They continue to argue. We've seen the Centro de Memoria, get involved, Cubillos, kind of complaining about ALN being behind some of the attacks. But generally speaking, we're back to business as normal. I was down at Parkway today where there's a smashed out Kai. The police are still working there. They've left up, they haven't cleaned it up yet, so there's still posters in the windows, but it's swarming with SMAD. Absolutely, yeah, for good or for bad, a lid has been put back on the situation.
Yeah, and up this side of the city, and obviously last week I was talking about in Verbenal, and I didn't know this at the time when we were broadcasting live, that actually 3 people lost their lives in the protests here in Verbenal. So the Kai in Verbenal is obviously a delicate one, so that's still been pretty much left untouched. But I walked by there this afternoon, and they've painted up some of the graffiti that was on it, but there's been no plastering or anything done on it at this stage. And you're correct as regards the SMAD forces. It seems to be now any policeman, pretty much any policeman on a motorbike is accompanied by an SMAD officer. Just to mention, though, in a barrio that I guess would be seen as rougher and poorer than Verbenal in general, up in Corito, I walked up there last night or the night before. The Kai there was obviously attacked, but they've got it back up and running pretty quickly. It was plastered. It looked new, spick and span almost, just missing a few windows. So, yeah, it's funny because I've read a few articles in international media, one on RT.com. There was another one on a couple of other, as I said, English language media. And this idea that once again, Colombia is on the precipice and we're staring into the abyss. And I couldn't help but think of an article I wrote a few weeks ago called Carry On, Regardless Colombia. So that these things happen, and then the next day they just get on with life and go about their business. And that seems to be what's happened in this regard. I just want to, one thing you mentioned about Claudia Lopez and the Duque thing, I saw today that Claudia Lopez has said, don't go to your CAI for complaints. Call the Secretaría de Salud number 123. Now, I guess in theory that says a lot, that she's saying do not go to your CAI, and she's put up this obviously kind of fight against the police, which seems interesting. In practice, I guess it's probably like any other service in Colombia. You'll dial, you'll be left on hold for a while, and they'll either ask you to, they'll expect you to give up or perhaps go away anyway.
Such cynicism. Yeah, I mean, that's probably going to be the case, isn't it, in all honesty? But it is interesting what you highlight there, Brendan. This idea that there very much is a clash between the police and Claudia Lopez. She doesn't appear to have full control over them. Now, there is a bit of a confusion here in that the police chain of command is a bit complicated, and she is overranked. But only by quite high levels in the Ministry of Defence or the police. So it does suggest that if the police are ignoring her orders, it does suggest that they're following orders directly from somebody higher up rather than acting fully on their own. We had a kind of bizarre situation at the weekend with the chief of police in Bogotá saying that he doesn't need an order to open fire, or his men don't need orders to open fire. That's worrying if that's how he feels. I mean, that goes back to what we were saying last week about this confrontational attitude between police and civilians. And yeah, again, that's fairly worrying. But you know, the protests, it's interesting you said around Colombia. We had a headline in the Bogotá Post, I mean, about the problems in Medellin. It really highlights something. In Medellin, somebody got kicked by the police. In Manizales, one CAI was set on fire in the center of the city, the cable plaza. Bogotá saw 13 people die. This really, in some ways, this is definitely a Bogotá issue rather than a Colombia issue.
Yeah, interesting. I guess obviously in other more peripheral regions in Colombia, there are other issues at stake, and we talked about them in earlier episodes as well, in terms of the massacres, however you want to define it, and that are still ongoing. But yeah, I didn't realize, I knew there had been trouble in Manizales and Medellin, but and also Cali, I believe, but obviously compared to Bogotá, practically nothing. Just mentioning Claudia Lopez, I had my moment of 2020 on Sunday when Claudia visited Verbenal, but it was interesting. I did get up close and personal. Just by chance, I was going down to the concert that the Alcaldía had put on in the aftermath of the deaths and the riots. And I thought, okay, I'll go down and have a look. It was meant to start at 3:00, and surprise, surprise, it didn't start on time. But Claudia was walking around and visiting some of the shops that had bullet holes in them and having a look. And then she came out of one, and she was met by two spokespeople, young, in their 20s for the area. And just one thing they said, which did stick with me, was that, look, Claudia, it's not concerts we want. It's real, proper help. I mean, I know the gesture of having a concert and getting together. I actually don't know how many people attended it in the end, because I was there until 4:30, and there was still no sign of it starting, and it was beginning to rain. So I said, well, I'm getting out of here. But yeah, what's interesting, of course, these peripheral areas of Bogotá that can often be forgotten about. And I've said this before, there are pockets of poverty in the north when people generally think the north is rich, and of course you don't have that.
Well, I mean, the north is richer as a whole, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And the protests haven't been limited just to this this howl of protest against the police. We've also had yesterday afternoon Misak protesters in Cauca in Popayán pulled down a statue of Belalcázar. And that's quite an interesting development. I think what's particularly sad for me about this is that there's a lot of comments on the El Tiempo story, which kind of say, oh, you know, it's because of his history with slavery. And it seems to me extremely sad, because in that same article, there's a MISAC spokesperson quite clearly giving the reasons, you know, saying, well, we wanted to pull down this statue because it represents a genocide of our peoples. It's put on top of one of our holy sites. It's literally there defiling it. This is a man who killed our ancestors with dogs and with impalement. I don't understand why people a lot of people seem to be trying to connect it to Black Lives Matter, which is a worthy cause in its own right. But I wonder if this is a case of maybe the methods being copied, but not necessarily the motives.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And obviously people like to make connections being made to our protests here last week to what was happening in North America. And obviously the zeitgeist suggests that something happens. We saw it in the 60s. It happened at a slower pace, of course, when you had the civil rights movement that started in the States. You had the student riots as well and protests in France, which led to the civil rights movement in the north of Ireland. And we're perhaps seeing similar things, but there are obviously very specific things at play here in Bogotá and in Colombia in general compared to what's happening in North America. I do find it interesting, though. I'm not in agreement. Or in disagreement, I guess, with what they did. If they want to knock down the statue and it's cathartic for them, brilliant. It's not going to change much, to be honest. I'd be more concerned about dealing with the present legislators and government officials and people that are over them, I should say. But I find it that there are some people of a certain political persuasion, of course, that think that anybody that's indigenous, it's kind of that noble savage idea that anything they do is fantastic. I even had it on a kind of slightly less serious note with yahe and ayahuasca. That people who take that, they're kind of going, but it's not a drug. It's a wonderful thing and it takes me to a higher place. And then everything else is a drug. I kind of go, well, with yahe ayahuasca, you get sick first and then you experience your high. With alcohol, which is my drug of choice, you tend to get your high first and then you get sick afterwards. But to kind of put something just because it's indigenous on a higher plane, I find that nauseating.
Absolutely, no. That's quite correct. I mean, and again, you're right. They're not. I think often indigenous communities aren't treated in the same way that other communities. They're not held to the same standards that other communities are, which I think is very disappointing. In terms of things not changing, though, I would disagree slightly. From what I understand, to the Misak, this is quite a holy or sacred site. The pyramid that has now been grassed over that the statue stood on. So in that respect, there is the big symbolism of, I suppose, any Misak person that's now wishing to treat that holy site in the manner in which they respect their holy sites. They don't now have that giant reminder next to them. So it is a little bit different, I think, to, let's say, the statues in Bristol, my home city. But from getting...
Ollie, just I think you're more read up on it than I am. Like, the question would be, why now? I mean, that statue's been there a long time. So again, is it linked to the general atmosphere that we have?
I mean, absolutely. Like I said, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the method, and I'm not pretending that I have any great insight into the Misak community. We have a few students in the university. But I mean, I wonder if the method absolutely has been copied, just not the motives. And yeah, why now? Who knows? I mean, there's probably a bigger story there. But anyway, comments if anybody's watching, if anyone's got anything to say, comments on the news, very much appreciated. If you've got anything you want to contribute, anything you'd like us to discuss. And of course, we'll be looking in about 15 minutes, we'll be looking at some of the quirks and odd little strange things of living in Bogota. So if you've got any of those you'd like to share with us, drop us a line. We're always eager to take advice. But Brendan, from iconoclasm of invading forces to the new invading forces, international flights are starting up.
Yeah, but it kind of seems it's a bit up in the air. So where are we starting? North America, or at least the States anyways, is the first to kind of get off the ball, along with another couple of the bigger countries here in South America. I know you guys at the Bogotá Post have been monitoring this. I've had a few existential crises to deal with the last couple of days, so international flights were far from my mind. But go on, give us the lowdown on where we're starting.
Well, basically, nobody really knows, do they, for the long-term future. What we know for now is on Saturday, Fort Lauderdale in Texas will be flying in to Cartagena. Don't ask me why that flight is there. And rather worryingly or pleasingly, I quite like the idea of this flight on the way out, which is going to Miami. So Viva Air have kicked off again with their flights to Miami. That's fantastic news. The more people we can send to Miami, the better. I'm not sure that I want them coming the other way. It does seem a little bit... Yeah, stay out of this one. It's hard to see what's going to happen in the long-term future. We've heard lots of rumblings about Europe opening up from October, but nothing really fully concrete so far. What we're starting off with, though, after those two American flights, we've got the US, of course, plus Mexico, Brazil. We've got Ecuador and Bolivia, near neighbors, and then Guatemala and the Dominican Republic. So it's not a great long list of countries at the moment, but of course this is a sort of multi-phase project that's going to continue on and on. There's a bit of confusion about biosecurity, so it's not really clear. There seems to be that you're encouraged to take a test and to use the Corona app and to register online before traveling. However, there are some people saying it won't be until the end of the month that they fully implement those demands. So you might be able to get away with it for now. I would recommend for all people traveling, check the requirements of the country you're traveling to, because that's going to affect everything, of course. Make sure you have your COVID test. You can buy them in Caruja. There's no real excuse not to have one. Do your little pinprick test and fill out the necessary forms online, which you can find either on the airport's website or on Migración. Fill them out. No more than 24 hours before flying, and no less than 1 hour, but fill them out. Turn up at the airport no more than 3 hours before going. And once you're on the toilet, once you're on the plane, don't go to the toilet. That's the key thing. So one of the reasons we're starting off with flights of no more than 3 hours is because they want to keep the toilets shut for the whole duration, if possible. You're being encouraged not to use the loo.
Yeah, I'm guessing one is desperate and you have to go to the toilet.
Oh yeah, they're not going to. I don't think they'll make you soil yourself in the seat.
Well, I hope not. Just on that biosecurity, from what I'm aware from Migración, just in the Migración journalist group, until the 30th of September, the rules are going to be as they are. But without a test, you will have to do a 14-day quarantine entering Colombia.
That's right.
And that will be monitored and things like that. So I guess if you can take the option,
that might be true on the other end, of course, which is why it's always worth taking a test. Like if you're flying out of Colombia, you might also have to quarantine.
Yeah, you mentioned one thing there, Ollie, just showing your classism there. You mentioned Corruja, and you can get a test in Corruja. For those of us who don't go into Corruja that often, how much is a test?
Good question. I actually don't know myself. The only reason I know they're available in Corruja is because I have friends who have had who have either tested themselves or had their children tested. So, yeah, that's the only reason I know that. I personally haven't been in a Corruja for years.
I like the way you're distancing yourself from that. Just put a shout out there. If anybody does know how much those tests are, it would be nice to get that information. And for anybody who might be listening to this as a pre-record, you can get in touch with us using the hashtag, not the hashtag, the Twitter handle at Bogotá Post. Find us on Twitter at Bogotá Post, or indeed you can find my own personal one if you like at Wrong Way Corrigan, or W Way Corrigan, I should say. And also, just for those tuning in, we've been talking about the news, what's been happening. So we started off about how the protests have dissipated to practically nothing. The iconoclasm, I should say, that we saw in Popayán, and right now we're just talking about international flights and the tentative restart of international flights here. And we have a comment in there, Ollie, I believe.
Yeah, Simon Turner here is asking whether tests are needed for internal flights. That's a very good question, Simon. There do seem to be reports of people flying without the tests. There is, of course, no real quarantine requirement within Colombia, traveling Colombia to Colombia. But yeah, I don't know. I've certainly heard some people say that they've had themselves or children tested before moving through departmental boundaries. I wonder if some departments are using different rules than others. Not fully sure, I'm afraid.
Yeah, just one point on flights and visas and tourist stays. I tried to get information tonight. I do try and research for this show every week, Ollie, trust me. And this is quite pertinent for me. It could be anyway in the next few weeks. Is our visa time still on hold? Because I'm in kind of a in-between visa situation. And this is obviously relevant for some people who are still here on tourist stays that got paused. Their time got paused, frozen, as they say, congelado here. I haven't been given a proper answer, but as things still stand, we're still in the health emergency, and that means time is still frozen. Is that correct? Am I right?
That's until the end of November. But again, it's interesting what you say about research. I mean, something we come across time and time again in the Bogotá Post. It's just getting information. Getting actual up-to-date information sometimes can be really, really difficult and really confusing, and you get different reports from different places. So, things may well be open to change. We don't know if the medical emergency will be curtailed, extended. Very hard to call. Very, very hard to call. What I would say is, and now I know a lot of people complain about Migración more, the Cancillería itself, especially with visas. What I would say, migration in general, I tend to find if you're acting in good faith, you're probably okay. Now, the visa office is a different story, but Migración tend to be relatively flexible, I think. Now, if you tell them, hey, it took me 6 months to find a flight out of Colombia, just to hang around on a tourist visa, don't, expect short shrift. But if you can reasonably say, look, this is the earliest flight I could get out without it being stupidly expensive, blah, 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 I think they're probably going to be relatively lenient. But let's move on. We've got a pair of quite strange stories here. So first up is my one. We've got a campesino down here in Cordoba, up on the coast. Now, he comes from a little town or a little area called Planeta Rica, and I think we can all agree it's very well named. He has produced a yuca, a single yuca, of around 130 kilograms. Now, I have to say, I read this twice. I thought it must be 130 pounds, and that would be pushing it, to be honest. But it does seem to be a real deal. We've got a picture here on El Tiempo. It takes two sturdy-looking men to carry. I mean, how much fried yuca could you get out of that?
I was just going to say, you should have got that out physically, the picture of that, to have a look at it. But I can
really should.
Is it a world record? Do you know? Then will that be going into the Guinness Book of Records?
El Tiempo are cagey on this. They've put it as Record Mundial in inverted question marks. So who knows? I don't know if the Guinness Book of Records have a section for largest yuca. I mean, I guess they do. But
what about yuca anyway? I've always found it one of the strangest kind of tubers, whatever you call those root vegetables. Oddly enough tasting. I like my pasteles de yuca, I have to say. Fried to the hilt, yeah. But just on their own, there's a strange texture to them, I think.
Yeah, they're one of those things that can be done, I think, very badly. And we've got as well your man, Ami.
My man, yeah. Well, of course, you know, people like ourselves who are trying to get more viewers and listeners or whatever, and we're engaged in media, you can only look on with envy at these YouTubers and influencers. So Ami Rodriguez, a 26-year-old Rolo, a Bogotano, apparently has earned, wherever they come up with these figures and how exactly it works, but I'm sure they have it well worked out. It's worth saying it in US dollars. I know we're in peso territory here, but the sums just get ridiculous when you put it into pesos. Per month, course. I think he's like 11 million followers on Instagram. His content apparently is aimed more at children. I read the story. I didn't really go into checking his content out too much, although I must confess, I did briefly look at his Instagram, and I saw there was a place that you could email him directly. And of course, Brendan Wrongway Corrigan, thinking of piggybacking off other people, I sent him an email and said, would he like to come on Wrongway's Colombia cast? I am still waiting for a reply. But in terms of his money, apparently he earned per month last year $244,000 US. Not bad work if you can get it, which equates to $2,928,000 US per year.
It's not bad at all, is it?
And he obviously does it for the love, because he's still at it. So there you go.
Although I would say that's chicken feed in turn compared to Colombia's most famous export, James Rodriguez.
Here we go again. This is turning into the James half hour that we're doing every week.
Well, I didn't watch the match, but apparently banging on 3 million Colombians did, making it by far the most watched international game of the week, which, you know, means Everton have dethroned the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona. No small achievement. Whether or not he'll be able to push it through, whether or not he'll improve, hard to say. But certainly, thinking about all the fears we had last week, he seems to have started off well, at least.
Well, Ollie, you said, I think 2 weeks ago, can he do it on a rainy Tuesday night?
Yeah, let's see what happens when he's up at Turf Moor, when it's Tuesday, when it's December, when the sleet is coming in. Let's see how he copes up there. But certainly for now, it's a cautious good start, I think, even if it was in the fine.
I was going to say that could be a good point to move on to Egan Bernal, because I know you've got some things to say about that particular gentleman. But while we're on the topic of football or soccer for our North American, indeed Irish people call it soccer too. Just a couple of games from this side of the world. The Copa Libertadores returned, and we had a goal fest with the two Colombian teams involved last night.
3-3.
Yeah. América de Cali lost, unfortunately, against Internacional 4-3. And Medellin also lost, Deportivo Medellin, against Caracas. So Caracas, or Caraca, as they would say without the S pronounced in Venezuela. Caracas is a good football team. That surprised me. I thought they were more into baseball, but they lost. And as we are...
If you're saying they beat Medellin, I mean, let's not jump the gun and say they're good.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, look, it's Deportivo Medellin, exactly. But Colombian league football, I would have thought, would be at a level above Venezuelan league football. But anyway, who knows? And as we are talking right now, Barcelona, no, not that Barcelona from Catalonia, but the Barcelona from Guayaquil, they are playing Junior Barranquilla in Guayaquil. I don't have an update on the score, but they're playing right now. So a little bit of that's the football from this side of the world. But I know you've got a few things to get off your chest about Egan Bernal talking about sunshine.
Not really. Actually, I think the thing that annoys me a little bit about cycling coverage here is that Egan Bernal, I mean, obviously, he's the defending champion. He's going to, he carries the weight of that on his shoulders. I understand the interest in that. The one that puzzles me is Nairo Quintana. So we had a situation on Sunday where Colombia had a fairly bad Sunday, we can say, in the cycling. We saw Quintana and Bernal both lose a lot of time. And then that was repeated again on Tuesday. But I think what makes me a little bit sad is that actually one of the really big stories, certainly of Sunday, was Miguel Superman Lopez staying with the leaders. He was the man who could hang on. And he just got nothing really from the Colombian press. It's only this morning that he's really started to get a big thing. Let's just rewind for a moment. Bernal came in with a strong team. He was the defending champion. He was expected to go at least to the podium. Really, people thought good shot at retaining his yellow jersey. Nairo Quintana, obviously, he's faded a while, but he's expected to be there or thereabouts. Maybe you'd think he would be in the top 10, something like that. Miguel Lopez came in maybe expecting to win a stage. If he's lucky, trouble the top 5. Maybe top 10 would be a good, solid performance. As it stands, we're 3 days away from Paris, 4 days away from Paris, 3 stages away from Paris, and he's on the podium and looks fairly likely to stay on the podium going into Paris. He's won a stage, and he's looked, I think, the strongest of all the Colombians throughout. But again, he's still not necessarily picking up the headlines that Quintana and Bernal do, and I find that quite sad.
But we're definitely now, just for those who might be fully following it, but we're not going to have a Lopez Tour de France victory. It's not going to happen now, no?
A yellow jersey, no. But he's taken a stage. That's definitely not to be underwritten. But just like Daniel Martinez before him, very much overshadowed by the big names of like Quintana and Bernal, which...
Well, yeah, the phrase sacred cows comes to mind, I guess, when you're talking about it. You can't say a bad word against these guys, because when you were telling me about Egan Bernal and his decision to withdraw, I couldn't help but think, in a different sport, but I can imagine what he was saying. Former Manchester United captain and Republic of Ireland player Roy Keane, I can imagine, like, what, you're pulling out? You're pulling out of the race just because you've a bad back or something, like grind your way through it and get to the end. So it seems there's a bit of a soft centre there, perhaps.
Who knows the secret? I mean, none of us are feeling the pain that Egan has in his back. So hard to say. He's 23. He's young, but you're right. In cycling, there is a bit of a sour taste, I think, whenever somebody pulls out for this. There are so many legendary stories, you know, even from Colombia, people like Lucho Herrera finishing bloodied, people like Eddie Merckx breaking his jaw and continuing. It's a bit of a macho sport in that respect. So it's unusual for the defending champion to pull out through injury. Very unusual, especially when it's not directly after a crash. So hard to say. On the other hand, it's entirely possible that he did himself a much bigger mischief than anyone had thought earlier in the year, and it may be the case that he shouldn't really have started in the first place. Very hard to say, very hard to speculate right now.
Okay. Well, anyway, I guess we won't be seeing, as you said, a Colombian in the yellow jersey this year, but well, it'll be interesting to see. What, tomorrow's a time trial, is it, tomorrow morning? And then
Saturday's the time trial. But yeah, I mean, from cycling and the love not being shown to Miguel Angel Lopez, there's also a lot of love and friendship not being celebrated this year. So, I mean, this should be the month of, you know, amor y amistad.
Well, it is, Ollie. It is the month. It's just that, of course, when most people are locked inside, well, not locked inside now, but we're not going to offices or we're not meeting up as frequently, then we don't have to engage in it. Now, some people might love it, but I know both of us have worked in Colombian offices where you have to do the old amor secreto. Now, this is the height of my show, my public display of affection to you, Ollie. The animosity that existed between our two nations for hundreds of years. I'm going to wave this lovely little thing that I got from the British Embassy. I think it says consular support for British nationals. There you go. That's my love to you, Ollie. And that is no more.
I would say, Brendan, that you know, I was looking forward to getting some sort of similar tap from your government this year, but coronavirus got in the way just before St. Patrick's Day, so no invitation to the Irish Embassy this year, which genuinely I'm quite sad about, because I was quite looking forward to that.
We all were.
I've got one of them little stirrers up there as well. It's amazing the stuff you get here, isn't it? But yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I'd forgotten it was Amor y Amistad, to be honest, because I haven't seen lots of pink bears in every window. And to me, that's a very positive thing.
Yeah,
but of course,
what I was just going to say, like, yeah, last year I wasn't in office, and we did have to do the whole amor secreto and leave a little gift in the whole month. They do it as a whole month. They don't do things by halves here, of course, because obviously we celebrate St. Valentine's on the 14th of February. Wonderful day. It is the birthday of yours truly as well. But and here it is officially the 19th of September, so it's this Saturday. But they do the whole month of celebrations. But yeah, we kind of get to avoid it this year, I guess, or at least pretend, I didn't know it was Amor y Amistad.
Well, that's bringing us through to our main subject. So, yeah, I mean, it does feel odd. It still feels odd for me. And, you know, normally I'm reminded of it by all that pink everywhere and all the constant reminders that I should show my love by buying things. And of course, without that this year, it does slip the mind, I think, because you don't expect this to be in September. I mean, no one else in the world celebrates love and friendship in September. It's very much a quirk of living in Bogotá, and that's what we're talking about now. So any of you listening out there, we haven't had too many comments this week, but anyone that's got anything they'd like to share, any of those little unusual quirks, those strange things about living in Bogotá, living in Colombia, please do get in touch, drop us a comment. We'd love to hear what you have to say. So, Brendan, tell us something odd about living in Bogotá.
Yeah, here we go now. Here, let it all out, Brendan. No, well, I mean, one of the first things that I noticed here when using public transport, and I just used to find it, I still find it rather odd and kind of, oddly frustrating because I don't know what it says about me, why it bothers me so much. And indeed, they might have, they might be right to do it these days with coronavirus and stuff. But this fear of the hot seat syndrome that they have. So you go on a public bus, be it the Transmilenio or an old Colectivo, and when I first came here, Collectivos were far more popular. There was none of those blue buses. And they would hover for about 30 seconds to a minute over a seat. I mean, fantastic squatting, great for the thighs and the legs, I'm sure. It tones them up. But like women of about, old women, 80 years of age, able to do this, and you know the way they drive here. Exactly. So I could just never understand, and I've never been given a definitive answer as to why this happens. I don't know why do they not like that feeling of sitting in a hot seat that somebody has just vacated?
Absolutely bizarre, isn't it? I mean, you'd think on a cold Bogotá day, it would be not unpleasant to get a little bit of radiated warmth. I've always heard that it's something to do with bacteria coming in your arse or something like that.
Be careful with that. Yeah.
Which seems to me, just, odd to say the least. I know exactly what you mean. We've all seen it. We see it all the time. And I haven't seen anything like that anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, thankfully, obviously now I'm not taking public transport because I don't need to be moving around the city like I did before, and now I have a bike, so I can avoid it altogether. Really, so I don't see it as much. But yeah, it's still to this day, it does bug me. But that's kind of my well, I won't say my top. I don't have a list of things, but it's there. It's one of the things. Give us one of yours.
Well, it's kind of continuing. It's sort of bottom related again. Discarded plumbing. Now, I know that might sound weird, so just bear with me for a while. Again, I even took a photo this afternoon, which I meant to show to you. On my way down to Parkway in Bogotá, walking along the streets with my dogs, and somebody's thrown a sink onto the pavement. A whole sink. Like a proper ceramic sink, not a plastic one. We're not talking about metal, we're talking about internal plumbing that somebody's disconnected from their plumbing system, taken out to the streets, and dumped. And I've never seen that. I've travelled to a lot of different countries. I have never, ever seen toilets, sinks, a whole 9 yards just thrown out into the streets. Bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. I can't think of anything more Bogotano to me than a beautiful mural of graffiti and underneath it a toilet thrown out. And it seems really bizarre. I understand people, fly tipping a fridge. You just need to unplug it from the wall. Yeah. But toilets and sinks, these are big, heavy things. Bidets as well. Big, heavy things, really, literally plumbed into the wall. It's not something you can easily pick up and hoy out. Utterly bizarre.
Well, it does beg the question, though, because people are just putting them out to be collected for rubbish, I guess.
Well, I guess so, yeah.
Or maybe they're trying to solve the lack of public toilets and facilities in the city in general. Oh, we'll put a toilet there. It's got no plumbing connected to it, but anyway, it'll do. But it does beg the question then, sorry, but where do other people in other countries throw out their toilets when they're done with them?
That's got me thinking as well. Yeah, you wouldn't throw out a toilet in England. And to be honest, I've never been in the position in England of having to replace a toilet. I guess the plumber plumbs in one toilet and takes the other toilet away. I don't know. I don't know. Genuinely, I have no real idea, no frame of reference. This is something so unusual, I just can't get my head around it. But anyway,
I have to say, as somebody who's worked in construction, I'm guessing, I think anyway, that a lot of people just smash them up and throw them like where maybe some backfill is needed or whatever. Yeah, that's normal.
Maybe that's really the odd thing, that they're whole solid toilets rather than broken ones.
Yeah, yeah, fully functioning.
That's top of my list. What's next on yours, Brendan?
Well, I know this is one that we can kind of share in the whole Que pena con usted. The saying, I guess the translation is, well, what a pain, what a pity for you that I have just jumped to the head of the queue while I've been waiting patiently in line, and somebody comes in and they say that with, que pena con usted, and go ahead and order whatever they want. Without a worry in the world. Yes, it is terrible for me who's been waiting, but they're fine. They're getting what they want. Now, I know you shouldn't probably dissect a saying too much, because from our side of things, and even other Spanish speakers, they would say, well, they use a que pena where a lo siento would probably be the most appropriate phrase. But maybe que pena has come to mean lo siento, so they just say que pena because it's what they say. But then sometimes you have to look at the actions behind it, and it really does seem at times, no, I don't care that I've inconvenienced you. Your time doesn't matter as much as my time. So it doesn't matter you've been waiting in the queue for the last 15 minutes. I jump to the top of it, and a short little que pena will suffice, and the world will be right again. So I know it's one of those that we can't get our head around.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing that irritates me to no end. And I'd say, actually, if we're talking about language, I'd probably say por eso can be really frustrating as well, in that, you can have as you'll know, you can have everything ready with your visas, and they say, no, rechazada. You say, why? And they say, por eso. And you go, but for what? And they say, oh, la visa, I know, this papel or that papel, and you say, but it's all done. Look, I did the translation and the apostling and everything. And they go, sí, por eso. No, I just told you that I've done everything you've asked me to do. That can be odd.
Yeah, I must quickly add, just in case, from my own visa thing, it's not that it's just the requiring more paperwork. Yeah. So we're okay in that regard at this stage. Yeah, but it does it does make one wonder, because, as I said, in other countries, like I had a colleague from Ecuador, and the Venezuelans I know here, they don't use that que pena. It is very much a Colombian saying. Now I use it myself as well, of course, to say que pena when maybe I should be saying lo siento. But it almost feels, if you say lo siento, you're admitting that you did something wrong, whereas with que pena, you're saying, well, I didn't do anything wrong, but I might have just inconvenienced somebody. But hey, that's not my
issue. I think that's the thing that gets to me about that particular saying, is it's that idea that it's like an act of God, and it's not. It's an act of Ernesto choosing to push in the queue. Here's another one for you, Brendan. Cash machines. Now, how long would you say is a reasonable time to get money out of a cash machine? Even bearing in mind, Colombian cash machines have a couple of extra, you've got to hit the donation button, you've got to hit the receipt button maybe, so it's a little bit longer than back home. But what would you say? A minute? Minute and a half?
I'd say a minute. I remember my Irish friend here, Podge, said that, and he said like less than a minute, and he said like time me, I can do this in less than a minute, because he was giving out. Yeah,
I mean, as long as the cash machine's working quickly, because some of them are a bit sketchy. Mm-hmm. I think I'd back your mate Podge there. Yeah, I think he's got a good shot at that. I'd like to put him, but your mate Podge is doing it, I would guess, at a conservative estimate, around 20 times faster than a lot of people in Colombia. At least. I've been waiting outside cash machines for a good quarter of an hour before, with one person in the queue. What are they doing in there?
It does beg belief. Like, somebody tried to give me an explanation years ago that it's to do, and you can kind of say that this is a little bit sad, because it's all to do with a lack of funds. But that didn't make sense then when you kind of delved into it a little bit more. You're kind of going, well, hold on, what do you mean? They were saying that they would go in and take out the minimum, and then they weren't sure, like, could they go and take out more? So they keep on going until they couldn't take out anymore. But you're kind of going, can they not just check the balance, and then they'll know what's in there? Unless they think it's giving free money. I don't really know. But yeah, I have seen that, because there are times you can kind of see in, not that I'm having a look to see, find their number or whatever, but you can see, and they do enter or put the card in and take it out, put the card in and take it out on a number of occasions. You're kind of, what are they doing? I mean, maybe they're doing their makeup or whatever. I don't know. But
I mean, I would understand it on the coast, maybe, where, you could think, well, it's air conditioned. I could probably hang out in here for another hour. But yeah. Perhaps it's just, me being very British about this, but I just feel incredibly guilty for anybody in the queue. The minute I'm in a cash, I will happily leave a cash point. Like, if I accidentally hit the wrong button and it sends me back to the start, I'll leave without taking any cash out if there's people behind me in the queue, because I kind of think, well, that's my fault for being a proper donor and putting in the wrong number or whatever, or, trying to accidentally try and withdraw, 25 million pesos instead of 250,000 or whatever. And yeah, to me, that's my fault, and I'll go to another cash machine somewhere else. But I don't know, bizarre. I can't get my head around that.
I agree. Well, anyway, guys, if people are just tuning in, we're talking about our Colombian quirks or idiosyncrasies, things that we kind of find a little bit odd here. Both of us have been here long enough, both of us nearly a decade, I guess. So you'd think we would have got used to them by now, but still they baffle us at times. So if you've got any strange things that you've noticed, or even Colombians listening in, if you agree or disagree with us, or you can shed some light onto why these practices persist, do let us know. And of course, if you're not listening live, if you're listening this on a pre-record, do check us out at the Twitter handle at Bogotá Post. We are recording this in association with Colombia's #1 English language newspaper, the Bogotá Post. I've another little one. Or do you want to run with another one there, Ollie? I have one that I want to mention, but I'll let you come in. I want to paint myself as the good guy here.
Okay, well, here's a funny little weird one. I adopted dogs a couple of years ago. Had them nearly 2 years now. And I found out, Brendan, quite a lot of dogs in Colombia speak English. Now, I don't know why, but when I'm in the park, I went through a bizarre paranoia for a little while of thinking, are they speaking to their dog in English to somehow make me feel comfortable? And then I thought, no, the world cannot revolve around me to that extent. That's not reasonable. And no, absolutely, a lot of people give their dogs commands in English. And I don't fully understand why. I mean, I can see in part that sit is much quicker, much easier for a dog with its limited brain to understand than si and te, which is a little bit too long, I think, really, for a dog. But I mean, and I've had people comment to me how unusual it is that my dogs receive commands in Spanish. Which
so your dogs are Spanish speakers?
Well, they're bilingual.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, they don't speak anything, do they? They just respond to noises. But they have Ben, oi, Ben. No, they're sleeping.
They're going to jump up on you now. We're going to have the dogs appearing.
They've got Ben and they've got Vamos. They've got sit. They've got stay. So, they work in two different languages. But there's a lot of dogs out there that genuinely are just working in English, and I find that odd. I just find it odd.
You're going to make me now, of course, probably start noticing that noticing it full stop, because I never really took any notice. Do you think it might be, though, a class thing and a strato thing? Like maybe if I'm in Estrato Rose, no?
I don't think so. I think some of it might come from watching dog training videos online, which often I guess are in English.
Okay. Do you know what
But
might
yeah.
be interesting to watch? The Simpsons or Los Simpson in Espanol and see.
Can't do it. I've tried. Every time I see The Simpsons in Spanish with those Mexican voices, I can't deal with it. It's like listening to my mother on helium or something. It's like I recognize the face. It's a face that's spoken with the same voice for the last 25 years of my 30 years of my life. But now somehow the voice is different, and I can't deal with it.
Well, I was saying that you should do it for research purposes only to find out, how they speak to Santa's little helper.
Oh, I see.
That's why, to see do they actually speak in English when they're. I don't know. Are there many episodes? Anyway, that's another one.
But finish us off, Brendan. What's your final point?
I've a few, but so we'll probably come back to this in future episodes. So I'll probably go with the one that's most pertinent. I think, kind of on the travel theme I was on about, like being on buses and seeing people hovering. Another thing, if on the rare occasions I'm in a taxi, but it doesn't even have to be a taxi, but a car, and they've this aversion to closing. I would just say normally closing the door. It's like, don't slam the door. Well, I'm not slamming it. I'm just closing it. If I do it any weaker, the door surely will not close properly. So you get this taxi driver. Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, you get this taxi driver.
Go on. I spend a lot of time, like you say, not closing doors because I'm so terrified of being told off for slamming them that I feather them and they just kind of bounce back.
Exactly. Again, the kind of contradiction here is that, for the contrast, you get a taxi driver who's been driving at breakneck speed, sees that the light is red, from 500 meters away, but will still proceed to drive up, no doubt damaging the brake pads on the car, or at least giving them severe damage. No going through the gears to slow down, none of that kind of stuff. And then they're concerned about somebody perhaps closing the door with a little bit too much aggression for their liking. I just, again, the mind boggles in terms of where's the sense in that? You're driving your car like a lunatic. And on these roads where there are potholes at any, or a hole in the road where there's a manhole cover missing that you could find yourself driving into, it's one that I find strange. But again, like where it comes from, I'd love to know where these things come from. You said something the other day that perhaps do the North America, the people from the United States, do they have a tendency in a macho way to slam the door, and hence they think every foreigner is going to slam the door?
I do wonder that. Yeah, like I do seem to come across a few Americans that really love to slam those doors. So I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. I was never taught to slam doors. In fact, the opposite. I was told not to slam doors when I was young.
Of course. Yeah. Have we time for one more or what? Or
I think we should probably be trailing what's coming up next week, shouldn't we? We've got 2 minutes here on the clock.
Yeah, and get people to wake up. It must be a dreary Thursday. People haven't been too active in the old comments section. Unfortunately. Yeah, it is. Yeah, we like the engagement, Holly. We like to get people involved. So if you are listening to this on a pre-record, guys, the Twitter handle at Bogotá Post obviously is available 24/7. Give us your thoughts, feedback, what you want us to discuss, or you've listened back to previous episodes and you want to pull us up on certain things. Please, we accept all criticisms. We prefer obviously when it's complimentary, but that doesn't happen. Not for us. Anyway, Ollie, what are we going to do next week apart from the news review, which always happens?
Let's get on communication in Colombia. So we're going to be looking at body language. I know you're a big fan of that yourself, Brendan.
I'm giving you directions. Yeah.
We're going to be looking at, some Colombian body language, Colombian slang. We might look at some of the quirks of Colombian Spanish, so things like que pena could come up, things like that. Could be quite a fun episode, I think. And of course, the way to address people, so not just to and usted, but also, we can come across as a little bit too direct at times, things like that. So it will be about communicating and indeed miscommunicating in Colombia.
Okay, Ollie, lovely stuff. I'm going to leave you again. I know you feel a bit patriotic there. Feliz Dia de Amor y Amistad, Ollie. Ciao, ciao from the north of Bogotá.
Ciao.